Is this album, Moving Pictures by Rush, an actual portent of our contemporary culture and political situation? Is this the Nostradamus of rock? On this video, I'm going to explore and see whether that is the case, because it might just be. A few months ago, I decided to redo Rolling Stone's greatest albums list and put actually greatest albums in, not their rubbish critics like we think that Marvin Gaye's the best album in the whole world rubbish. And I put Dark Side of the Moon at number 1, which for me is a brilliant example of how an album works. It explores very deep psychological stuff in a very profound way. And it's also instrumentally brilliant, and most people who listen to it are blown away by it. And it's had, Dark Side of the Moon is an incredible album. If I was being a little bit more subjective, there's a few albums I would stick in there. I think if I was to reevaluate, this album could well be the greatest album ever made. And the reason is because what it says, what this album is on about. What the hell are Rush on about? Because this album only makes sense now. It only makes sense when you delve into the esoteric meanings here and see how they seem to impact directly on contemporary culture, right? And I find this quite frightening when I really start to get into this album. On this album, I'm going to go through the album, the title, the meanings, the artwork, and then each track, and pull out what I think they're about and how they relate to contemporary culture. How Rush knew this at the time, how they could see 45 years into the future, I don't know, but they did, okay? So, I would say that the overall theme of this album is something that's very close to my heart, to use a song title by Rush, and that is this idea that the arts are very important, that the emotions are important, and that creativity and the freedom to be creative is absolutely essential for a functioning culture. Rush had been exploring this, fired up by the sort of libertarian right-wing, politics of Ayn Rand, had explored this on tracks like 2112, for example. They'd explored it on Hemispheres. They'd explored it on tracks like Free Will, Spirit of the Radio. This theme is running through Rush's music all the time. This album seems to be the great expression of that very specific exploration of the romantic idea of the aesthetic experience of being alive. All right, being in the world and celebrating the wonder of the world. That for me is the overarching theme of this album, is that we're alive, we're experiencing it, we need to get out and experiencing it. Now, the thing is that we are surrounded by media, and the media is like an alternative reality that's not quite as real as the real reality, okay? So what we have here is a pun on the term moving pictures. What we have here on the front is we see pictures being, we think, taken into an art gallery, but they're not. They're being taken away from an art gallery, right? And each of these, we have the Rush man that stood up against Father Brown and the temples, the priests in the temples of the Sea Rings. We have this famous painting of a dog's playing poker. I'm not too sure why that's there. I think that's just to make us laugh. And then we have a picture of a witch being burnt at the stake. Now, here we have people that look like they live in some sort of socialist dictatorship, like some sort of communist hellhole. And they are lamenting the fact that these paintings are, being taken in? I don't think so. They're being taken away. They are moving the pictures away. Art is being destroyed, right? It's been destroyed by a socialist, Marxist regime. These guys have turned up in their red clothes, and they are moving these out, right? It looks like they're taking them in, right? But if you actually look at it, He looks like he's taking it in, but the rest of them look like they're moving it out, okay? Now, when you flip it over, you can see, we suddenly realise this is a ruse because it's not real. None of this is real. This is actually a film set, a film set making moving pictures. That's what they're making. See the director here, they're all taking a rest. But what's really interesting for me is this bloke here. There's a bloke up there and he's sat on top of the thing. He's overseeing it all. He's not the director. He's all dressed in blue. He's dressed in blue, right? And out of his head is like sticking like this crown. A 3-pronged crown is sticking out of his head. Who's blue and has a 3-pronged crown? I tell you, there's only one person. Poseidon, Lord of the Seas, right? And if you look, on each side, we have green tridents representing Poseidon. Now, Poseidon is Lord of the Sea. And in esoteric symbolism, the sea represents the swirling unconscious, right? The swirling unconscious from which your emotions come. And he's overseeing, right? He's not overseeing it like the director. He's overseeing this whole thing, this whole machinations, right? Poseidon can be seen as the god of the imagination, the god of everything that's in opposition to an enlightenment thinking or totalitarianism. This idea that things are going to come up from the depths and they're going to pull you down. There's chaos in there as well. Okay? So that's the meaning of the album. We put it on, and the first track we hit is their most famous track, but also one of their most esoteric tracks. It's called Tom Sawyer. Now, obviously, Tom Sawyer relates to the character of Tom Sawyer with his friend Huckleberry Finn, that was created by the great writer, Mark Twain, at a time in American history where industrialization was pouring across America, and there was a tension between the sort of outdoor frontier, own man, living your own life, and the conformity of industry all around you. And Tom Sawyer, he comes from the town. He's not like Huckleberry Finn, he comes from the town, but he has a rapscallion nature. He's intelligent, he's interested, but he is also naughty. He's a rule breaker, and he likes to whip his friends up and go on adventures. And the adventures he wants is to get out of the town and out into the real world of trees and rivers and adventure and danger. And so this is what Tom Sawyer represents in those books, and everyone's grown up with those books. But we're going back to another time. It opens up this, and this first paragraph on the lyrics is inset. So this is almost like the beginning of the album. Well, it is the beginning of the album, but it's set apart as though this was almost going to represent the whole album's themes. A modern day warrior, mean stride. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean pride. Though his mind is not for rent, don't put him down as arrogant. His reserve a quiet defence, riding out the day's events, the river. Right, so this is really just painting a picture of Tom Sawyer, but he's placing Tom Sawyer into our world, into our modern world. The world is love and life are deep like an ocean. Love and life are deep, maybe as his skies are wide. So we have this idea of the depth and the wide. It's the great dialectic as envisioned in nature. It's heaven and earth. It's the conscious and the subconscious is being evoked. And Tom Sawyer is sat in the middle of it, a young man, a boy looking out into the world with a rebellious nature. He's going to push against the rules and regulations. He's going to find his own way. No, his mind is not for rent, not by any god or government. Always hopeful, yet discontent. He knows changes aren't permanent, but change is. This is incredibly profound and is actually quite straightforward. He is his own man. It is a statement of that sort of libertarian individualism that Ayn Rand had written out in books like The Fountainhead, that Neil Peart's devouring at this time. And this is why a certain contingent hate Rush. I've come across them. They hate what Rush are about, okay? So we have this exit the warrior, today's time summary gets high on you, and the energy you trade, he gets right onto the friction of the day. Towards the end, he has almost assumed a little like Poseidon-esque character that you feel he's no longer here, but he's here, and he's feeding off us, and we're feeding. I mean, the Tom Sawyer spirit is alive in the world, in our modern world. Okay. Then we have a series of tunes that really, for me, describe almost like dystopian futures. Everyone is like a dystopian future, sometimes a dystopian past, but relating to the future. And everyone spells out over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tracks all the problems we have now in contemporary culture. For me, it's quite incredible. The first chapter up. So imagine this is operating like one of those Amicus horror films that the British put out in the late 60s, early 70s. Each of those is his own little story. This is a prog epic, right? But each of these tunes are related. The first one that comes up is Red Barchetta. Now, Red Barchetta, what it's about is we're in the future. It's a totalitarian dystopian future where you can't do certain things. Now, what you can't do is go driving around in your car, right? So cars have been banned, especially petrol cars like a Red Barchetta that represents a time of rock and roll, a time of rebellion, a time when you could go out racing in your car and you would feel like a wild-eyed loner on going towards the gates of hell, you know. So Tom Sawyer, this is where he's at now. He appears here, you know, with this desire to drive this car against the rules, right? And his uncle has a farm out in the countryside, and hidden away, he's got this Red Barchetta, all right? And he jumps into it, and he goes to this drive, and he's careering through the countryside. And these robot things, robot police like Robocops, they follow him, and he decides to give chase. He beats them by going through a bridge. This is very reminiscent of things like the Headless Horseman stories, for me, at any road. Let's have a delve into these lyrics. My uncle knows a country place that no one knows about. He says it used to be a farm before the motor law. Laws have been brought in. There's no farms anymore. We have this motor law. On Sundays, I elude the eyes. What are the eyes? The eyes would be cameras. They're watching everywhere, aren't they? We've got cameras all around us, watching everything we're doing. He tries to elude those by getting out into the countryside. And hop the turbine freight. So he has to get on public transport, hops over that. He's now into this other world. To far outside the wire, these are all in capital letters, where my white-haired uncle waits. Then he says, jump to the ground as the turbo slows across the borderline. This is so he's jumped off this train like a hobo, you know, jumping off into the wild world of the 1930s America in a way. Run like the wind as excitement shivers up and down my spine, down to his barn. My uncle preserved for me an old machine for 50-odd years, right? So 50-odd years, they state it. This is back in 1980. 50 years from 1980 is in 5 years' time. This album is describing the world in 5 years' time from here. So he strips away all the old debris that hides a shining car, a brilliant Red Barchetta from a better vanished time. He fires up the willing engine, responding with a roar, tires spitting gravel. He commits his weekly crime of going for a drive. Now, why could have cars been banned? Why would you want to buy banned? You know, the reason why cars are banned, they will be banned. These cars will be banned. The idea of the global warming and all this is here. They didn't know this at the time, but this is like a dystopian picture of the future where you can't drive a car anymore, right? Wind in my hair, shifting and drifting, mechanical music, adrenaline surge, well-weathered leather, hot metal. So this brilliant description of driving through the countryside, that experience, the emotional experience. See, we're going down into the depths. It's not about the surface. Poseidon is at work here on this album, and it's exploring these emotions. Suddenly ahead of me, across the mountainside, a gleaming alloy air car shoots towards me 2 lanes wide. I spin around with shrieking tyres to run the deadly race, go screaming through the valley as another joins the chase. The music is incredible. This tune is like a mini epic. It's through composed, and the music is like, you feel like you're in the middle of the car chase. At the 1-lane bridge, I leave the giant stranding at the riverside and I race back to my farm to dream with my uncle at the fireside. He outwits them. He outwits them because of the very car he is driving. So there we have a story of a dystopian future, which with our today's eyes seems to be, it seems to be critiquing what we lose in the sort of move towards net zero. So the environmental situation we find ourselves in now is being sort of critiqued in a very emotional way. Then we get the tune YYZ. Now, YYZ is an original. The only thing we can say it has any meaning about is that sort of frenetic complexity to it. Seems to evoke aspects in Red Barchetta in the middle section, which evoke travel. And YYZ, of course, is the code for home. Russia out and about, they're traveling around the world. It's a little bit like, Passage to Bangkok. They're all over the place. And then they see home. YYZ represents them coming home. Then we get the the fourth track on the album, which is called Limelight. Now, this is really interesting because you'll probably think, yeah, well, this isn't about a dystopian future. This is just about being famous and being, it's just about what it's like to be famous. Neil Peart's quite a shy guy. He's writing the lyrics. He suddenly finds himself well known and he's troubled by it. But there's things in this which is interesting. Living on a lighted stage approaches the unreal for those who think and feel. In touch with some reality beyond the gilded cage. We have this gilded cage, and that's not real. But for anybody who feels these deep emotions, the realm of Poseidon, like the guy driving the car in Red Barchetta, if you feel these emotional things, then this fake stage that you're on is like a gilded cage. Cast in this unlikely role, ill-equipped to act with insufficient tact, although he says insufficient tact, which sounds like insufficient tackle, right? One must put up barriers to keep oneself intact. You need to put your barriers, he's saying, you need to put up barriers against this fame. Why is he telling us this? We don't need to know this. We're not famous like Neil Peart. This is a bit indulgent, isn't it? Very nice for you to tell us what it's like from your point of view of being a famous rock drummer and doesn't want the fame. You should be ungrateful. What's this all about? Then we have the chorus. Living in the limelight, the universal dream for those who wish to seem. Living in the limelight, the universal dream for those who wish to seem. You wish to seem, you wish to put out a picture of yourself to the world, which isn't you. It just seems like you. For those who wish to be, actually to be, you must put aside the alienation and get on with the fascination, the real relation, the underlying theme. What underlying theme? The underlying theme of the album, the underlying theme of Tom Sawyer, the underlying theme of Red Barchetta. It's telling you that there's an underlying theme here and you have to follow it. You have to go into the depths with Poseidon. You have to take that part of you and you have to consider it in the way you live your life. Living in the fisheye lens, caught in the camera eye, I have no heart to lie. I can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend. He is discussing social networks that we now reside in. Absolutely. On this. And then he quotes Shakespeare, all the world's indeed a stage. He says indeed a stage because they had an album called All the World's a Stage. So he's continually Neil Peart's continually referring back to other tracks, that there's a theme going on here. Performers and portrayers, each another's audience outside the gilded cage. Now here, that directly points to social networking and doesn't relate to the famous place in which he finds himself, because he says, all the world's indeed a stage, and we are merely players, performers and portrayers, each another's audience. We are all everybody's audience outside the gilded cage, right? So for me, he is pointing out a real problem we have trying to operate in our contemporary cultures, how we deal with social networking and how we deal with the public face we put out there, and the fact that we've all become performers on this gilded stage being Facebook and Instagram and all those social networking sites. Flip the album over and we have the centerpiece of the album. Now this is called Camera Eye, and when I was young I thought this, what's Russia doing here? Is this like a camera just seeing what's going on? It's just basically it's like a photographer seeing the action in two cities. It's just comparing two cities against each other, New York and London. Now when I read it, at my age, living in this time, it has a completely different meaning. So it starts off, it's in two parts, 1 and 2. It's like the most epic track on the album. Rush are really good at epics. This is 10 minutes 55. They're around about 10 minutes long. They're brilliant. And this is perhaps, I would say, their greatest epic. I can't think of one greater than this. Xanadu might go up against it, but Xanadu is a bit sword and sorcery, a bit, fantasy, prog. This is not. This is a lot more modernistic. The musical tone of this, it sort of works around two chords that are going back to each other, and it's quite minimal in its structure. It's proggy, but it's minimal. And I find that very interesting, and it resonates to sort of the minimalist composers like Steve Reich and Philip Glass. In 1982, there would be a film come out called Kind of Skatsy, which uses minimalism to paint the picture of cityscapes, and it would draw you away so you see them objectively. Rush are doing this on this track before that. They were making the film when this was being made, but I don't think it could have influenced them. But it has that feeling. But it's far more specific in what it describes. Grim-faced and forbidding, their faces closed tight, an angular mass of New Yorkers, pacing in rhythm, race the oncoming night. They chase through the streets of Manhattan. So everyone's on this rat race. They're on the 9 to 5. They're in New York, and you feel it all around you. Everybody is grim-faced and forbidding. They're focused on what they're doing, and it's their life, their industrialized job, 9 to 5 existence. They chase through the streets of Manhattan, headfirst humanity. They pause at a light, then flow through the streets of the city. And this evokes this sort of camera eye lens that you see in the film Kind of Skatsy, where you see this stop motion of cars building up with all the lights at traffic lights and then going. And it looks almost like the pulse of blood round, the veins of some sort of huge, beast. And then it says, they seem oblivious. And the music changes here. They seem oblivious to the soft spring rain, like an English rain, so light yet endless from a leaden sky. The buildings are lost in their limitless rise. My feet catch the pulse and the purposeful stride. I feel the sense of possibilities, but I also, I feel the wrench of hard realities. The focus is sharp in the city. Right? There's a sense of possibility. There's all this thing around you, right? And everyone's driving towards it. They're all trying to achieve this thing. But what do they forget about? And it's bizarre. Neil Peart goes directly to the English aesthetic. Almost like the English aesthetic, the Platonic English aesthetic, which is a grey day like today, and then the sort of fine mist of England. Neil Peart, before he joined Rush, had spent time in the UK. And I believe the reason why they're the only truly great progressive rock band on the other side of the Atlantic is because Neil Peart was able to pick up that sort of very English aesthetic and take it back with him. He understood it. He could see it in the works of Tolkien. He could see it in science fiction. And he could see it in a certain aesthetic that is so brilliantly captured here, right? That this proves my point that you don't have to be British to utilise the English aesthetic. But what does the English aesthetic represent? Well, now the camera eye moves to another city, London. And it paints a picture of London, which I would say is no longer there. Wide-angled watcher on life's ancient streets, steeped in the history of London. Green and grey washes in a wispy white veil, mist in the streets of Westminster. Westminster is where liberal democracy starts. He has gone back to the source of what creates New York, this great capitalist empire. He's gone back to it. Wistful and weathered, the pride still prevails alive in the streets of this city. It's now gone. He's pointing to something. And then he says this, are they oblivious to this quality? The quality of light unique in every city's streets. Right? He's going back to a way of seeing the world which is aesthetic. Again, we go back to that realm of the emotional aesthetic. It's what I am trying to champion in a world. I'm trying to champion it without recourse to postmodernist ideas, going back, but also going forward, where you value the notion of art and emotion, and you value the ability to see this stuff. Pavements may teem with intense energy, but the city is calm in this violent sea. Now, what's underlying this is the track title, Camera Eye. Is there a camera eyes seeing all this? It's as though there's an objectivity. He's pointing out that there are cameras picking this up and seeing something much more aesthetic within there. But of course, the camera eye has been alluded to in Red Barchetta. When you go into a city now, you are surrounded by cameras. The cameras are just recording the aesthetic quality all day long. Nobody notices that, but they're there. What it's saying is it's us in our city-dwelling existence. We need to go back to what the English aesthetic represents. It's exactly the same as what I try and do here on this channel. Right, the next track up is Witch Hunt. And this is part 3 of Fear. As a young kid, I thought, well, is there part 2 and part 1 of Fear? I don't believe there was. So it's like, not only is he referring to the past, on here, he seems to be referring to the future as well. The future of what Russia are going to. So he's almost saying, look to the future. It's almost like saying this album is looking to the future as much as looking to the past. Obviously, this is the most easy one to represent. The night is black without a moon, the air is thick and still. The vigilantes gather on a lonely torch-lit hill. Features distorted in the flickering light, their faces are twisted and grotesque. Silent and stern in the sweltering night, the mob moves like demons possessed. Quiet in conscience, calm in their right, confident their ways are best. This, for me, is the totalitarian elements in our society that are out there baying for blood and want their way of seeing the world to be put onto everybody. In other words, for me at least, the way I read that is the woke left. Quiet in conscience, calm in their right, confident that their ways are best. None of us know what ways are best. None of us are in a position to stand up and go, what you're doing is wrong. You need to do it like this. You can protest about your situation, but once you start telling someone else how to live, we move towards a totalitarianism, and totalitarianism will quash creativity. That is the point of this album. The righteous rise with burning eyes of hatred and ill will. The righteous rise. These are people who think they're right. They are right. The righteous rise with burning eyes of hatred and ill will. Madmen fed on fear and lies to beat and burn and kill. They say there are strangers who threaten us in our immigrants and infidels. Right, so here he is dealing directly with the problem, right? And he is saying that there are people that are trying to mobilize us against immigrants, mobilize us against outward forces. And here it seems to be also taking a dig at that sort of ethno-nationalist right wing. And here we have embodied the battle between the two. The first verse really pointing to some sort of totalitarian righteousness, and here people who stoke up our fear of immigrants and infidels. They say there is strangers too dangerous in our theatres and bookstore shelves. Now he goes directly to saying that these people are saying that there is danger in the arts. Those who know what's best for us must rise and save us from ourselves. Quick to judge, quick to anger, slow to understand, ignorance and prejudice and fear walk hand in hand. This is a very complex track. For me, It is pointing out that those who try and censor the arts, those who try and play it down, are totalitarian. And they try and point out that there are dangerous elements in there that will cause terrible things in our society. So what's very interesting, those who pour hate and scorn on immigrants in the country and their beliefs, right, are doing exactly the same things those who pour scorn on artists and creatives who want to express themselves and are saying something which the establishment find uncomfortable. All right. We now come to the last track on this album, and it's called Vital Signs. Now, this for me is the futuristic track. It doesn't sound like any of the rest of the album. It's much more tied into much more sort of modern popular music tropes at the time, which still stand up now. The idea of modernism or postmodernism that emerged in 1980s pop music still sounds like that now, because of the way our culture's atrophied. So suddenly we've got little, Lindrum samples coming in, and it's all very robotic, and it still sounds modern. This one is perhaps the most interesting of all, as it ties up all the themes of this album. Unstable condition, a symptom of life in mental and environmental change. Right, there's an unstable condition in our life. Now, as a young man, when I saw the words "and environmental," I thought this was about environmental issues, which were around in the early 80s. They were there. I always assumed it was about that. But if he's criticising environmental issues, why has he got his hero driving around in the petrol car for? See? So I don't think it's about that. Atmospheric disturbance, the feverish flux of human interface and interchange. And remember, this is all about blips and bops, and it's all about interaction between people in sort of this robotic. This, for me, is describing the internet more than anything else. Right? And this is why you get things like the impulse is pure. Sometimes our circuits get shorted by external interference. Signals get crossed and the balance distorted by internal incoherence. And here he says signals get crossed. The next album is going to be called Signals. Right? The tired mind become a shapeshifter. Everybody need a mood lifter. Everybody need reverse polarity. What is this about? This future where things are unstable, and people are tired and they want something else, in this sort of place where sometimes our circuits get shortened by external interference. What realm are we? If we're in the realm of the interval, if you're in the realm of the internet, a tired mind become a shapeshifter. In this realm, you could shapeshift. You could be something else. This is about transhumanism. Everybody need a mood lifter. Everybody need reverse polarity. Everybody got mixed feelings about the function and the form. Everybody got to deviate from the norm. An ounce of perception, a pound of obscure. Process information at half speed. That's a dialectic there. You've got information, what's out there, and then you've got obscure, the esoteric, what's not out there. You take a bit of that and you take a bit of the other. You process the information at half speed. Pause, rewind, play. Now, he's talking about technology relating to moving pictures, relating to cassette tape, to videotape. He's right trying to explain it in the technological place where they're at the moment. Warm memory chip. Why say memory chip? This is a point where computers aren't developed enough to be in the public consciousness for him to be. He's imagining a future, right? Random sample. Hold the one you need. So he's talking about sampling. That's just emerging. I think it's one of the first albums to be recorded digitally. Leave out the fiction. The fact is this friction will only be worn by persistence. Leave out conditions. Courageous convictions will drag the dream into existence. Right? So this seems to be foretelling something, and then it repeats. Every mind become a shapeshifter. Everybody need a soft filter. Everybody need reverse polarity. Everybody got mixed feelings about the function and the form. Everybody got to elevate from the norm. So here we have this idea of this young figure in the landscape, fired up by the landscape, but a free thinker, not encumbered by rules and regulations. And they fight against this totalitarian thing that is just trying to get you to stop cars and not use petrol. And they outfox them. They outfox them by getting into a chase and using their wherewithal to get out of it. And then it talks about being on a stage, or on this stage where these other realities try to come in. It's the fake reality that's all the way through this. There's a fake reality. We need to get to the realness, the underlying dream. We need to get to that. And then it paints a picture of cities with cameras. And you look at the people, they're not aware of the beauty that's around them. They're just trying to get through the day. And what is that beauty? It's a beauty embodied in the English aesthetic, which points to Westminster. It's ideas of liberalism, it's ideas of free will, of independence, of tolerance, all those values that we should all be in a Western liberal democracy holding as sacrosanct. Then we get the idea of people out there like the Bain mob, baying for blood, trying to shut people up on both sides of the political spectrum, but most importantly, trying to shut the artists up that are trying to express themselves. And then we get this explanation about who we are as human beings and a new future where the circuitry of this imagined internet space that doesn't exist at that time will enable us to transform, become something else, existing, but existing what? The virtual reality, or exist in the real reality, the underlying dream, you know. And this album is about the underlying dream. It's about reality and fakeness. It's about the film. Which film do you choose? The film of your real life or the film that's been supplied to you? This is the meaning of this album. This album succinctly sums up everything about our culture now. And maybe will succinctly sum up even more in the 5 years' time, which will be 50 years since this album came out, which will be 2031. 2030 to 2031. We may have well enacted all the things that Neil Peart was trying to get us to celebrate, but also be fearful of. It is my thesis that Rush happened on this album to stumble into a creative point in time where they hit the sublime, full target bullseye. This is one of the most beautiful sounding albums. The playing is incredible. The production on it is incredible. It's at once virtuoso. It's a rock album. It's also a pop album. It's everything and anything. And the themes explored in it seem to speak so deeply of the future that what was probably seen as sort of a bit of childish sort of dystopian future thinking by the contemporary critics, they didn't quite understand how prophetic this was. This is one hell of an album. That's my thesis. I could be wrong. That's how I interpret it. Maybe I interpret it in the way I want to interpret it. Maybe it is that thing that every picture is, you know, in the beauty of that picture is in the eye of the beholder, and so is the meaning in the eye of the beholder. Maybe that is the case. And that seems to be embodied, and maybe that is the meaning. Maybe we now return to this cover, and between the witch hunts, right, and between the man standing up against the totalitarian, these two people are both standing up. What do we have in the middle? We have a group of dogs playing poker. This is unreality. This is the unreality of the internet. This really points to almost like the memes in which we exist now, of poker playing dogs. It's interesting. Art is an interesting thing. It's interesting to have lived with an album for 40 years as I have done, be able to put that album on now, you know, 40 years later, and still see these things in there. That is the testament to a great work of art, you know. The artists got it right, and the reason is because they were able to balance the way they saw the world at that time, but opened themselves up to something else that they themselves did not understand. but they were able to really make a comment about the time they were in then. In 1980, and everybody was looking to the future as you go into that next decade, the last 20 years of the 20th century, and it's so long ago now. But it's almost like that heralds the second half, the atrophying of the postmodernist age, which had thrown up rock and roll. And they were a young band, like still not out of their 20s, but a band seen as dinosaurs trying to compete against this new pop music computerized aesthetic that's coming in. And perhaps them trying to see how they related in the world and survive and keep going aesthetically, they were able, through Neil Peart's incredible visionary lyrical ability, combined with his outsider awareness of the English aesthetic, something that I believe is so important in contemporary art. And maybe he just managed to touch on something that was truly profound, and in a way is a portent to the future at that time. And if that's the case, this means that art, when done correctly, and when it's not done, to appear great to the people that live out in that unreal world of the internet, to make art which truly explores these aesthetic things that Tom Sawyer's so interested in. Maybe if you get that right, it magically can foretell the future, or even better, steer the future in some way, in that now we can put that album on and maybe identify some of the things that are at work in our contemporary culture and see how our attitude to that has to change. Very interesting. If you like this video, then stick a like on it. If you want to see more videos like this, you need to subscribe. This one is a much more deeper. I enjoyed this one a lot. I was halfway there, so I decided to just pick the album up and just explore it in front of your eyes. So some of this I didn't know I was going to say. I don't know if this is any value. I've tried to do exactly the same thing I'm describing that they could have done. I'm trying to do it myself, and I'm trying to do it off this album. This album's just breathed new life into the world, hopefully, through me. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? It's not me, it's them. It's my reaction to the art. I'm a man that, as a boy, lived with this album. This is my favourite Rush album. Rush are one of my favourite bands, and this is one of my favourite albums of all time. It's in the top 5 favourite albums of all time. And that's what this channel's about. And I went back to it this week. And again, more riches came forth. So if you like me doing this, you've got to put a like on the channel. You need to share these videos because they don't do as well as the one I've just done before. That'll do a lot better on Rush. Done 2 Rush videos today. One a negative one and one a very positive one. I hope that really explains what true genius is. So if you have liked it and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. You can become a patron. Nip over to my Patreon. There's loads of free content. There's masses of content anyway. There's just, I can't remember. I've forgotten what's up there. Go and have a look around the Patreon. It's like a massive stuff now. And you can see some of it for free, or you can pay up and start trawling through all the stuff there. I also have a membership here where you can watch my videos early. And also I do membership videos as well. And they also go on Patreon. So the difference being, if you want to see the videos early and not wait around, then that you get that. I also have a cheaper membership here for drummers, where I do, so I'm about to film that now, some drum stuff for the drummers. I haven't done that for a while. And also you can put some money in my PayPal tip jar. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.